start of our event, so thank you very much for your patience as we had a whole lot of people frantically texting us saying, we're stuck on the bus, we're stuck on the bus. But thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the great debate, the Metaverse, and also welcome to the Precinct, Brisbane's House of Ideas and Innovation and Queensland's premier startup hub. It's so lovely to have everyone here today. My team, Advance Queensland, and the Precinct tenants are delighted to have this opportunity to share our all-too-secret innovation oasis with you all. So my name is Emma Murta, and I'm the Operations Manager of the Qld XR Hub, and I'll be moderating tonight's event. But before we kick off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and work, the Turrbal and the Yagara peoples, and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I also want to pay tribute to the thousands of years of innovation and knowledge of our First Nations people, a deep tradition that continues today. But I hope we haven't brought you here today under false pretenses, with all of you thinking that finally I'm going to get an answer to what is the Metaverse. Although this is a debate, there will be no losers, only winners, as we'll end up with a number of definitions of what the Metaverse is and could be. A recent McKinsey report estimates that by 2030, the Metaverse could generate $4 trillion to $5 trillion worth of value across consumer and enterprise use cases. So it's not something that's going to go away. So the series tonight will just be a series of questions. So I'll ask some general questions, some specific questions, and there'll be an opportunity at the end as well for people to ask questions themselves. However, if throughout the evening, if there's a specific question that you want to answer, just put your hand up, yell it out. I'll repeat it for the purposes of the people on the video, and then we can move on. Just as a random question to start with, who here are business owners or founders? So we've got some. Who here are people who work for small to medium enterprises in the IT or development space? Anyone here who are involved in any venture capital? Yep, got a couple. And anyone here who's just interested in the Metaverse and doesn't actually work in the IT or development or startup sector? Got a few of those. Any other categories we'd like to find out? Anyone from government? We can't forget the government. Cool. Yeah, I saw some hands go up and down really quickly. Don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed.
That's
cool. So thank you for that. So yeah, we do have a good range of different people. Anyone here think they know what the Metaverse is? Oh, we've got a couple of tentative hands. All right. But now, first to introduce our panelists. So I'll try and get my slides to work. No. Look, too quick.
Can we see the definition changes now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool to...
Yeah, you keep going. You got it right?
Yeah, just to get an understanding, high level, like hands up, hands down, happy face, sad face, for those online, has this changed or not changed as well? Because for the 4 people that put their hand up and said they know what the Metaverse is, I'm dead set willing to swap places now.
Cool. So to introduce our panelists, first we've got Tracy Whitelaw, who's the founder and CEO of Haven XR and the Chief Digital Officer for LGAQ. So Tracy's a digital specialist with over 25 years of experience in creating consumer-centric digital roadmaps and building high-performing award-winning teams. Last year she won the Women in Digital Australia Executive Leader of the Year Award, which was a testament to her commitment in delivering excellent digital leadership at every opportunity. So she's, yeah, it's pretty cool. Round of applause for Tracy. Of Qld XR, a location-based virtual engineering reality experience connecting the physical and virtual realm to immerse you in cinematic experiences. We'll then jump to Troy here. He's our global capability advisor from AWS. So Troy's an innovation evangelist, and he's responsible for forming alliances and providing thought leadership to governments, departments and agencies across the globe. And he works at the intersection of innovation, technology, government and policy. He works at the ministerial or senior executive level to provide innovative solutions and understanding of emergent technologies, including the impact or benefit they can have across traditional and new business models. Note to self, shut down your email before you do a presentation. There we go, we've got that sorted. So then, next on the panel we have Nick. Nick is the co-founder of Power Wells. He's also a town planner with experience in development projects, policy formation and community consultation. So Nick has worked across the public and private sectors in town planning in Australia, including consulting for multinational professional services firm Arab. And he was recently recognised by the Planning Institute of Australia as Young Planner of the Year for Queensland. So another round of applause for Nick. Then we also have Brayden, who's the Associate Principal Architect from Populous. He's an architect and a project leader, and he's got major involvement in Fortress Melbourne, the Southern Hemisphere's largest video gaming and esports complex, while being instrumental in the planning and design of Fortress Sydney, the next newer and bigger expansion into esports entertainment and game hospitality from Fortress Australia. So he's the lead designer on this exciting collaboration between Team PWR and Populous in their first Metaverse esport event. And we also have a fifth member of our panel, Nathaniel Holloway, who's a product owner from Splash. He has unfortunately come down with something unfortunate, which means he can't be here today. And it's not the spicy cough, he's just got a viral infection. But he sent me through some responses, so I'll be putting on my Nathaniel hat and giving his responses to what is the Metaverse, because Splash, who's a Brisbane-based gaming company, is striving to drive creativity in the Metaverse. So Nathaniel's role is a project lead for the Unreal development team, and he's also leading mobile and web app development teams. So they're trying to bring their music platform to new audiences. So basically allowing everyone to become an artist. So that's our panel. So as I said earlier, I said to these guys, I'm glad I'm doing the moderating and not being on the panel, because this is a very hard set of questions that we're asking tonight. And as I said before, there is no right answer. So what we're asking here is for people's opinions of what they know and what they're experiencing and what's out there in the world. So unfortunately there is no one answer, but that's okay. So the first question that we're going to ask is, what is your definition of the Metaverse? And I have some audio-visual accompaniments to this question. So our first respondee will be Tracy. So let me bring up the right video, and I will just play this little starting video as a bit of a precursor to the question.
Into the Haven experience, you very quickly forget about reality.
Tonight is Qld XR Showcase night. This is the first time that we're getting lots of people through the experience.
It's kind of like all the promises of Lawnmower Man from the 90s when everyone was hyping up VR.
I was definitely transported to another world. I wanted it to go on. You go to an event or a location, and it's like an immersive cinematic VR AR experience with elements of a theme park, which is very cool.
So the experience is completely leveled up. We've got from, a basic scene with some basic assets to having a full-fledged cave experience where you go out and look over an ocean with wind and a lot of sensory effects.
You sort of hear about, what it's going to be like, and it still just blows you away about just the depth, even just like that initial grabbing the torch.
The bridge was like wobbly, and underneath there was like water, and that was freaky.
So Tracy, what is your definition of the Metaverse?
No pressure. Well, firstly, the boring textbook definition, I guess, is an integrated network of 3D virtual worlds, which does not sound sexy and exciting at all to pretty much anyone. But as you can see from Haven, our definition, I guess, of the Metaverse is about how you stimulate presence in those people that participate. So when you step into a virtual reality experience or a virtual world, what you want to do is look at how do you make people in that experience feel so much like they're in reality in that moment that it becomes a new reality for them. So for me, the technical components of the Metaverse and all of those integrations that happen with people connecting, that's not really the exciting part. The exciting part is about how it makes you feel. And I always say that the Metaverse is like, who here remembers Second Life? Does anyone remember? Oh, thank God. Okay, you're not all too young, so you're going to get this reference. The Metaverse for me is just an evolution of Second Life. Back when we looked at Second Life, it was very much the same thing, an integrated network of virtual realms. The Metaverse is putting that into an experience where you can have presence and you can feel things and you can be fully immersed. So that's what I think it is.
Cool. Thank you. Well then, I have another small presentation slash video for Brayden. Let me just get myself queued up. I tried to go in the right order. So this is a populist video.
Yeah, hi, Brayden. It's a really good question, and I do agree with Emma's point that it's really kind of hard to answer at the same time as well. It's definitely evolving. I think we're starting to understand it more. But from, I guess, a populist perspective, and I guess from my perspective as well, it really creates, from an architect's perspective, a platform that creates a virtual reality experience. So it's something that allows us as designers and architects, which we've been doing for a long period of time in terms of engaging with models and buildings and trying to understand space and create space. The Metaverse allows us to engage with space in a way that we've probably never been able to do with space previously as well. We probably see it as a potential tool that could obviously enhance the built environment, both virtually and physically as well, which is probably really quite an exciting part of it as well. As I said, it's early days, hard to necessarily define. I believe it is going to constantly evolve, and it's really, I guess, our job and everyone else here to sort of work out what the true potential of the Metaverse and what that possibly could be. There's also many different platforms out there at the moment. There isn't actually one platform that stitches everything together, which is a challenge. I think I'll let the other panelists sort of talk about that. We've probably got more tech expertise than the architect in the room. What we did here with Power Esport is the guys from Power, Lachlan Power is a huge social influencer, one of the biggest, I guess, in the esport market in Australia. He came to us with a vision that basically he wanted to build a virtual high-performance training centre for his company, and he's based, and actually launched that into Fortnite. Now, me having known Fortnite from my kids and played Fortnite quite a bit, was quite excited about that opportunity. It was an opportunity as an architect and designer that was completely, totally unique, and something that you just would never think in your wildest dreams that we'd ever get the opportunity to be able to do it. But the great thing about it as well is it also defines some parameters in terms of why we're actually doing it. Because naturally the initial reaction is when you're designing in the Metaverse, it can be anything, right? Like gravity doesn't necessarily mean anything. So having that sort of challenge to say that we're going to conceive this building, we're going to go through a similar sort of briefing process that we would go through if we were designing a physical building and then building it in the virtual sense, was really quite an awesome experience. I think they got a lot from it. The other part of it as well is it allowed our client to actually experience the building prior and make adjustments and make changes and learn how they kind of want their environment to be, which I think is also a really kind of valuable and powerful tool as well. So I've sort of deviated a little bit, but
that's right. It's all good. It's all good. Thank you. I'll now just put on my Nathaniel hat and go to a little intro from Splash, and then I'll read out his definition that he's provided for us. So this is from Splash.
Splash is the best experience for you if you'd like to DJ, build a club, skate, become a pop star, dress up your avatar, drive karts, chill with friends, dance, vibe, jump in a dumpster, swing, game bang, show off your style, pick photos, see your dance moves, DJ battle, join band, bear battle, skaters, skate live, slide in, fast skate, use for music class, fun, music videos, recording, and Google, ring toss, drill up, go to music, music fun, take and so much more. That is Splash.
So Nathaniel's version, or his definition of the Metaverse, is that Metaverse is a shared online social spaces that empower users to be creative, generate content, make money from their works, and build unique communities. Many of these verses already exist today. However, as new technologies emerge Additional platforms and capabilities will also emerge. So users should be able to easily engage with these varying verses on as many devices as possible, in whichever way they feel most comfortable or able to do so. Some of the metaverses will take the form of hyper-realistic XR simulations. Others will go for a stylized aesthetic with impossible physics. Others will be entirely text-based. Some could be a mix of all of the above. Is there a strict definition of what the future of the technology and social interactions look like? I hope not. The underlying infrastructure needs to be as flexible and robust as possible, which will allow us to explore new possibilities. And regardless of what these upcoming platforms look like, machine learning creators and their user-generated content will be at the forefront of every company's mind. So you'll see new experiences, interactions, content type, communities, and stars appear through these platforms. So Splash has demonstrated the creator aspect with their Roblox game. There are celebrity players who are normal people in real world, but who are legitimate superstars to those in the game. So players are given the chance to be creative in a live social space where they can receive recognition and fame from other players. They're able to use Splash's musical instruments, host live music performances, build their own spaces, and compete in other game modes that will have their own sub-communities. So yeah, Splash opened my eyes to what already exists today as well. So thanks Nathaniel for sending that through, even though you couldn't be here. Now on to Nick. What is your definition of the metaverse?
Yeah, thank you all for. I asked to go late as possible because I was really like, I don't have a good answer, and it really is all of that. That's the main answer. It should be all of it, and it is, and it's all those sort of things together. And I wasn't going to do this because I did a presentation on Monday that started with Webster's Dictionary defines the metaverse as, and I went, it's a joke, it's ridiculous. But the process of even setting up that joke, I found that it's not accurate. Webster's doesn't even return a definition, but it returns retroverse below it, and that's essentially like traversing a cave system that you wouldn't be able to get back. I was like, that's kind of profound how it's like, it's got these whimsical sort of turns and stuff, and we don't really know where it's going. So like I started with this joke, and I was like, oh, this is kind of profound in that.
Joke's on you.
Yeah, here I am, not thinking I wouldn't say it again. Yeah, so it's kind of that, and it's really about what's the future of it, what do I want it to be, which is the exciting part, because it's early, it's nascent, it's basically my interest is just looking at the trend and seeing that it's coming in some form. It's going to be here in the next amount of years. It's going to speed up, it's going to slow down, it's going to become all these different things that you don't know what it is. But I think it's important that we're involved in shaping it, particularly the town planning background. I was like, these are virtual built environments. We really look at how everything works together. And I saw a lot of things that were mistakes that architects, actors, planners, and stuff in the last, we made these mistakes 100 years ago, like in these virtual worlds now, we don't want to make it like Brasilia or PDCA and that sort of thing. We don't want to be name on it. Sorry, but yeah, I've sort of seen that's playing out, so I think it's good to be involved.
Cool, thanks. And finally, Troy, I have a small video of yours also. I'll just play first.
Welcome to AWS Cloud Quest, Cloud Practitioner, the newest way to build your AWS skills. Cloud Quest is an open-world role-playing game that teaches you how to build real AWS solutions using cloud concepts and exercises. As a cloud practitioner, you'll venture on a journey to help the citizens in town transform their city by using cloud solutions. You can take your technical training to the next level by turning business problems into technical solutions through puzzles, simulations, and hands-on labs. As a foundational building block for skill building and career development, Cloud Quest gives you control of your learning journey at your own pace. With its of customizations, unique assignments, and game modes, Cloud Quest is a continuous learning experience. You can earn rewards to unlock various character styles, pet companions, city themes, and vehicles. Dive into the world of AWS and embark on the quest.
I'm so inspired.
Yeah, well, I'm not. So for me, it's really interesting. You know, they came out 6 months ago, and at that stage, that's what we thought the metaverse was, and that's a training concept.
In this video, I wanted to talk about how I passed the AWS certified.
It's just doing the play on thing.
Before you get
Sorry
started.
about that.
There's a fair chance it's more entertaining than I am. It's probably had 49 million views or something. And so look, I looked at that today because we got asked to present a video, and to me I'm like, wow, that's a really small point in time for us, at a really small point of what we thought the Metaverse was, and it grows all the time. Like at the moment it feels a bit like riding lightning. We are out there every day, and our customers are coming up with new solutions, not just us, but really are pushing the boundaries just like everyone else on this panel here. I feel that the other thing at the moment is that I do a lot of work helping the government understand emerging tech and what's the Metaverse going to mean for them, and how are they going to manage life. And it comes down to some really simple things. I get bonus points. Most people hand out business cards or sell stuff. If I do a Jeff Bezos quote in a presentation, I get a bonus point. So get ready, here's a Jeff Bezos quote. People ask him regularly what's going to change. And the Metaverse is a really good example of, oh my God, what's going to change? And he turns around and says, why don't you look at business about what's not going to change? There's some fundamentals of business ethics and business continuity that is not going to change. Our customers are inherently going to be dissatisfied. They're not going to come and say, I want to pay more, give me that slower, make it worse. We know what we need to do to make great experiences. And a lot of what we need to do for the Metaverse is no different than we didn't do before in Web 2.0 or Web 1.0. I think regarding a definition, I'm against making one. I think it's really cumbersome at this point. There is so much exploration and growth to go that as soon as I define it, I limit it, and I want the new and emerging brains that are globally playing in this space and are present here on this community and are attending tonight online. We've got to think about things differently. Without getting into any type of life, what we're creating now is something new. So for those people that have a bent or are interested in trying it, this is where we're going to go nuts, and it's going to be amazing, and it'll be free for all, and then it'll control. We have a double diamond approach to stuff normally. We think white can do everything, we realise it can't, and then we come up with new use cases. This is going to be the same. For me, I want to ask a few things. So, you're probably not aware, for those that are online and those that are here in real life, you've signed away in the small print tonight that we have 666 cameras live. We are filming your facial expressions, we are filming your body language, we are filming everything you've got. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions and I want you to respond with your hands, yes or no, down the bottom, no, up the top, yes. And I'm going to match that with a computer algorithm that I've already planned for tonight because I've guessed what's going to happen. For those of you that are really bricking yourself, it's not true. Okay, but so
it's not part of the briefing.
I know. But I really wanted to gauge who we're talking to and explain to you how complex it is, and I couldn't think of another way. So yes, there is no cameras.
Oh, there's one.
Okay, that's all right. And I truly admit to that there is one. There is nothing else. So we'll go to old school, hand up yes or true, no hands, false, no, middle. I'm going to ask you a few questions about what you think the Metaverse is, because every day I cross a few of these. So this one's from a well-known author called Tony Brayden, and he wrote the 7 rules of the Metaverse. It's well-renowned, it's famous. I don't know where I fit on it, but what I want to know is, hand up or down, true or false, up, the 7 rules of the Metaverse. Are you ready? There's only one Metaverse. Come on, a lot of non-voters. You've got to play. Most of the hands are down in the audience for those online. For those playing along at home, put a yes or a no, put a true or false. I expect people to play. The Metaverse is for everyone. Everyone thinks it's for everyone. There's one or two no, we might look at that later. Nobody controls the Metaverse. Everybody, I'm going to say it's 50-50. But feel free to do the hokey pokey in the middle if you're not sure. Like you can be English and sit on the fence and not make a decision, it's okay. The Metaverse is hardware independent. metaverse is the internet.
And more.
Okay, it's interesting. I think there's a central question. So what about if I had to think about societal themes and how the metaverse works? Decentralization. Who understands up, who doesn't understand, but who's 50-50, hokey pokey? What's decentralization? Don't understand. Okay. What about what the impact, and we're trying for arm up, I understand, arm down, I don't understand. Property rights in the metaverse. Wow, okay, we've got like there's 10 people plus understand how property works. What about self-sovereign identity? Couple of ups.
Anyone from WA here? Oh, no, sorry.
I had to Google myself, but composability, which is the interoperability and relationships of components. What the hell? Anyone understand that? No.
I don't think I understand the question.
Yeah, so the question still remains the same. Do you understand what community ownership in the metaverse is? Like a DAO or something like that, and how it's decentralized. Okay, last one, Matthew Ball. He's super famous. He's written heaps of stuff and monetized what he thinks the metaverse is. And he's cracked it differently. It's all about up in the air if you agree, up in the air down if you don't, hardware. No. Okay. Only one. You must work for a vendor. Networking. How the network combines and interacts. Yeah, it's okay. The computing power. Central to the graphics and the interaction. Yeah, that's really important. Not so much. Okay. What about the interchange between tools and standards? Ooh. So there's 3 people that are really smart and are paid zillions to tell you 7 things each about what they think it is. I had to find 7 too. But I think about them as layers, and the panel before cracked them really quickly. The first layer really is about experience. You know, like if you want a front row seat ticket in a concert, you can do that in the metaverse tomorrow. If you want to race in a car, knock a wall down, become a princess, you can do all that stuff. It's experience-led. In the middle of it, there's a discovery layer, and that's like an app platform or a place we go to buy, sell these types of experiences. And the third was really mentioned by Brayden before, it's a creator economy. I've got to create stuff, and at the moment it gets to the point where it's so easy that things like Sandbox allow you with no code to create your own metaverse and expose it to people. The use case for those things, I mean, it's way bigger than what we think about. I think we also mentioned spatial computing with Brayden, and that's VR, XR. You know, how do we understand those components of digital 3 and 4D that make a difference to town planning? You know, how do you do that sort of stuff? Then I think it's about decentralization. I can't really talk about that because it's about putting ownership in the hands of the masses, and I work for Amazon. I'm not really sure what their...
And we are recording. Yes,
yeah, I'm not sure what the point of view of it is, but in my own point of view for decentralization, I think of my modem as a supercomputer at the edge in the future that will power a whole lot of things outside of our house. We might have to pay for it. I can see IoT sensors by councils and governments and stuff that will pay me to just poll something in the radius. So it'd be interesting to see that. I think the thing that everyone hasn't talked about much with the metaverse is humans. There's a human in the loop here. And with humans, it's going to come all the good and the bad things, but it's going to come the ethics and all the bad things. But I think it's also going to come at the time to dream. I really am empowered by a lot of things I see in this realm, as I have been with other emerging technologies, because the people are the people going, I've got an idea, I'm going to make this real. And it'll go way past smart glasses and wearables and things like that. I'm doing a lot of work with teams around the world at the moment with more stuff. And I don't want to wear it on my head, but if I took to the 4 out of 5 people in the front, 6 out of the 7 people in the front row have glasses. Today I was trialling Alexa glasses. And I'm like, who wants them? But you've already got glasses, so maybe you do. You know, you could probably look at that. And I start thinking, where do those experiences go? And as we head towards 2022, there's a lot of, 2032, there's a lot of experiences that we need to input that for Queensland.
Thanks, Troy. Not to alarm anyone, I am just going to turn some lights on to see if that works. Just to give the cameras a bit of a chance for the people online. Dom says thank you.
Yes.
So thank you very much everyone for your definitions of the metaverse. I think we've obviously found that there's lots of different things and lots of different perspectives. So what I want to do now is mainly just sort of channel in on some of your individual expertise and ask some individual questions. So Tracy, first up, what do you see as the potential for new forms of entertainment in the metaverse, however we define it?
Well, you saw a little bit of what Haven's doing, and I guess I can pretty much just speak from that perspective, but the purpose of Haven and the origin of Haven was thinking about actually the evolution of cinema. So it didn't start really as, let's explore the metaverse. In fact, when we started talking about Haven in 2019, most people didn't really reference the metaverse that much until Meta took it over and pumped 10 million in last year. So we started talking about it as the evolution of cinema and experience. And again, like I mentioned earlier, what do you feel? What do you feel when you're in an experience? So Haven is effectively a location-based extended reality experience. And what that means is you can go with a group of friends or family to a social shared place and put on an ugly headset, which does not make you look cool. We're working on that. But when you step into that experience, you're actually stepping into an experience that combines both physical realm and virtual realm. So for us, it was less about just going virtual. It was more about how do we actually merge both so that when you reach out and touch something that you see in your headset, you're actually reaching out to touch it in the real world. Because that creates that sense of stimulating presence that I spoke about at the beginning. So from an entertainment perspective, I always think about, so The Wizard of Oz is my favourite movie, and I always think about when people, way back, it was made in 1939, they went to the cinema, it was pretty much all black and white movies back then, and they went to the cinema, and there was that moment that Dorothy opens the door, and everything becomes colour, and that was like a wow moment, like that was something that people would have felt and experienced. And so for me, when we start to talk about experiential VR and extended reality, that's what Haven's aiming for. It's that, wow, I've reached out and I've seen something in my headset, but now I'm carrying it and I'm waving it around and I'm interacting with it, and everything that I do is being captured so that the next time I come back, I might have a slightly different experience. So entertainment-wise, the first movie that we're doing is a horror movie. Which I love, because I'm like, that is the way to get adrenaline going, is just to scare the hell out of everyone and really smoke when I'm going. So it's a horror movie, so imagine that suddenly you are the star of that movie, and everything you do in that movie can be reflected back to the people with you. You can hear different conversations in your headset than other people, so you can psychologically get a little bit crazy, within health and safety limits, of course. So that's for me what it could bring to entertainment. But just on that, I also think when you start to think about extended reality, entertainment's just one form and one use of that. So from a Haven perspective, we're actually based up at the Uni of the Sunshine Coast, and we're already starting to think about how do we research, using that kind of experience for health or for education, or for telling stories and narratives around First Nation communities. So it's about extending that out. Once you have the technology and the content, you can pretty much be in any experience. That's kind of how I would explain it.
That's so cool. Not to put you on the spot, but how far away is this your vision?
We're planning to launch in 9 months. So we have an investor currently from Malaysia who's looking to put Haven experiences in shopping malls, theme parks, casinos, and so on. We're also speaking to some Chinese investors as well. So it's about 9 months away in terms of being actually live in Kuala Lumpur. which is terrifying to me.
Sorry, should you be working on
I
it
should
now instead of here on
be
this panel?
Yeah. So yeah, like, and that's. But it's been 2.5 years of really detailed and deep research and development as well. So yeah, about 9 months, and the reason that we're going to Asia is that that's really a test bed for us, and they're a little bit more advanced than Australia, really, in terms of some of those experiences. So it's a bit of a test bed. Next step will be, of course, opening in Australia and really pushing for Brisbane. And then after that, we've got a bit of a global rollout plan kicking off in the US.
Let us know if you need any beta testers.
I'll do that.
Except I don't like doing movies. Anyway, that's my problem. Thank you, Tracy. Brayden, question for you. How will traditional design and architecture firms use the metaverse, and what will this mean for design skills of the future?
Yeah, it's a good question, and a couple of my colleagues, Alex and Nathan, are here, who've actually generated this diagram, not me. But
here's one we prepared earlier.
Yeah, so we obviously, innovation's at forefront at Populous in terms of trying to understand what future trends are going to be in terms of technology, and what meaningful experiences and what that will all look like. If we go back from a technology perspective, I mean, modelling, 3D modelling in terms of building buildings has been around for like over 30 years, probably more. I think there's reports of being involved on the Opera House, to be able to create the 3D shapes that are there to be able to create that. But from the evolution of, I guess, design.
If it helps to stand up and talk to us, please do that.
I might do that. But what you can see here is that, when I was at school, we'd use AutoCAD and MicroStation to be able to, work with 2D softwares and the likes, and, that was obviously, showing my age, in the 90s. And then as we moved through into the 2000s, we progressed from 2D to 3D. And once we went to 3D, we started using software like ArchiCAD and Revit, and the modelling information got richer. The data that we could be putting in on each of those building elements become more complex, and we could obviously use that to inform decisions, both from our clients, but also in terms of the construction processes as well. And I guess they were all sort of single use. Now we're kind of moving on to sort of cloud-based technologies. The licenses are based in the cloud as well, and we're moving through sort of data, which is obviously not in the cloud, and how we're sort of dealing with that now. Moving into open-rich BIM data, which is now what we're seeing in 2020, BIM 360, which I just spoke through, and then obviously the evolution into VR and then AR. So realistically, the next steps, because this is on the verge of being the metaverse, the next steps is where we've ultimately got to go if we're going to evolve as a business, but also evolve as designers as well. The other thing I'd say as well, one thing, if we just look to the next slide, which this is really complex, but what I'm just sort of trying to give an example here is say that the normal process from a design perspective is there's a concept, there's a schematic design, there's detailed development, then we construct it, there's as-built information, and it gets handed over to facility managers, and then they obviously use that information to implement their strategies. But there's also an experience possibility that comes with this as well. So we can do initial engagement, we can do drone looks at the site, we can engage with the site, we can see the site, and we can do that in a virtual sense as well. We can then go into the pre-build, there could be optimization in terms of the decision-making processes of how we actually design the building, how we collect the data, how can that inform our decisions and how it can inform our clients' decisions as well. There's the virtual simulation, so we can take simulation data that's been collected and inform, I guess, the design process of what we're doing there as well. We can also take people through pre-sale virtual galleries so they can experience the building prior, which was my initial point, is that it can influence the design process based on the feedback that we're getting from people experiencing the building. Then we go to the metaverse and how it can be built and how the actual assets actually used into the future. The mixed reality sort of outcomes that can definitely come from that, and not to mention the operational benefits. There's a number of companies who are using, the modelling information to do SWIMs, which is safe work method statements, to be able to implement, sort of really difficult tasks. So, in terms of the platform and having sort of a workflow of how this whole thing works, I guess the team at Populous is trying to sort of, build it into a diagram. It's far more complex what this diagram is actually probably sort of suggesting, but that's how we're kind of using it to sort of inform our processes from a design perspective. the other part is it allows, we talked about virtual experiences. Populous, we create spaces or places that people love to be together. That's, I guess, our company motto. That's the emotional piece. So why is that only limited to a certain amount of people? When the Brisbane Olympics comes to 2032, why is there only 100 people that sit on the finish line? Why can't there be 2-3 million people who get to kind of experience that? So from that perspective, I love the fact that it could take us, it could allow us to engage with a far greater audience and have the same sort of amazing, meaningful experiences. The other one would be also disability. Some people may not necessarily have the opportunity to have the same sort of experience. I love the idea that virtual reality and technology and the metaverse is potentially going to unlock those doors, which could be a really, really amazing outcome as well. And the only other last one I was going to mention as well is it also allows our clients to make far more informed decisions about their business as well, which I think is also a really positive thing. And that can also lead to the sustainability benefits as well. So if you actually design something properly from the get-go, get all the stakeholders agreeing with it, it potentially will reduce the group spend moving forward. And obviously with everything we're trying to achieve in terms of lower embodied carbon, that would be a really positive thing.
Awesome, thank you. So Nick, what benefits can be gained from the use of digital twins in the metaverse? Tell me your story.
Thank you. Yeah, I almost asked that to be slightly tweaked, but I was like, no, it is a good stepping off point. So
yeah, feel free to take it wherever it goes.
So that's a good way where we do kind of look at that intersection of the physical and digital environment, and we kind of go down that path. It's like, are we recreating what's already existing? Like, are we building things before they go into the real world? And that's kind of been the traditional way that we've done things, right? It's like you have this virtual model, and you're testing stuff out before it becomes real. But this is that sort of shift towards like, we can actually inhabit these virtual built environments, virtual spaces, and put in these things that are kind of just models towards what the real world's going to be like. But they can actually be a thing themselves in there. And we kind of started going down, well, I started going down. So, sorry, I should quickly go like, I look at it through the town planning perspective through a PhD that I'm doing at Qd, but then also Arrow is my industry partner for the PhD, so we kind of integrate in the foresight and planning team. But it's across both, and so I need it, yeah.
When you say we, you're not talking about your multiple personalities, you're just talking about your different partners?
That and, yeah, so, yeah, then it's a good one. It's like, it feels like in my mind, it's like, well, it is too, it's like, I don't necessarily like it, but it's this sort of trends don't really care if you like them or not, right? This sort of thing's happening. It's like being involved with it, shape it, that sort of thing, because, yeah, I'd rather be amongst it, and I was going to like, shape it a little bit, rather than just throwing rocks on that side, which is the way I try to approach it. And kind of interestingly, I've never really used the VR glasses to go into ones that I'm looking at, and most of it you don't really need it right now. Colleague Qld Quest, I haven't actually installed it yet. It was maybe 5 months ago. So there's that kind of thing too. You don't necessarily need to be immersed in it, but it's definitely going that sort of way. And so planning is really how the built environment works together, right? So it presents as a spatial sort of science, spatial sort of outputs. It's really about the social side. So it's really like getting real humans in this sort of space. And coming back to the digital twin, we make digital twins of cities and of buildings, and we use BIM and we put it in, and we basically focus on materials, the resource flow, understanding the data, how people move around the traffic, how can we optimize stuff like that. But if you were actually kind of like a human-sized avatar in those sort of spaces, it's not a good representation of the space. So we kind of started to go towards like, well, that's being overlooked in a lot of the discourse. But then in the metaverse, it's all about being a person inside it. So what's that sort of intersection between the two? And I found a lot of problems, like, but then that's problems are opportunities, right? So like, what's it really like to be, I at a human level, walking around, that kind of thing, even without the VR on. And kind of got to this interesting sort of things I was just noting down is like, you can teleport anywhere in a lot of them. but there's still this value in walkable urban neighborhoods. So you can I could teleport back up there, but it's this nice sort of space. You've got like a short frontage, like an active sort of frontage where there's people there, a nice door, like things are going on. You actually still want to be in that space. And kind of went towards like, well, that's maybe analogous to like when we're using those VTOLs to kind of like pick up and go around between hubs. You still want this like nice urban walkable neighborhood of cafes and activities and all the sort of places that you want to be. And then maybe you do pick up and go along. So it's kind of went towards like all the similarities and what's gone from the like long history of planning architecture, that's sort of built by professionals. What's gone in, what kind of is happening there, and what could we bring out. So it's kind of looking at, it's kind of like ridiculous that we're teleporting, but there are some similarities to the real world, even if you do VR well enough, all these virtual experience rooms and stuff. It's a form of teleportation, sort of. And yeah, it's kind of going like towards where we want it to be. They got hit by a car in Decentraland, which is just a ridiculous sort of feeling. And it's like, okay, we're familiar with this area. We feel like we need to put an Aston Martin in there. When you have like an access way, it's like 80% road, and I'm still confined to a tiny little pathway on the edge. And it's like, okay, this is sort of happening, and we're just kind of going with what's intuitive and what we've sort of always done. One of the things I looked at was the files like 1968 Flight to the City, and I sort of just put that up because that was like it fed into UN Habitat 1. And it was really like citizens' right to the spaces that they inhabit, the city, and then it kind of went all around, like it started to become like a digitized sort of thing, where like getting all this digital engagement, things are going to get better. And my PhD supervisor in 2015 kind of redecorated it as the citizens' right to the digital city. And so you really can't understand a physical space currently without probably understanding the digital aids over it, which is even just Google Maps, maybe Yellow Palette sort of going. So we really are at a point where we are trying to understand the physical or the digital without considering others. You're not doing it it's not a complete sort of understanding. It's where we kind of got to. It's like, well, that citizen's right to the digital city should extend into the virtual. So we really want to be co-creating it, and I went down this pathway of all the Web3 stuff, digital ownership, and very quickly it was kind of like crypto's been the thing more than I would have expected. It was like, kind of get it, not for me. It's like, okay, well, NFTs are coming along, all right, they've been the thing more than I would have expected, kind of get it, not for me. But then a 3D virtual environment makes sense to me, and it's like, well, we've got this sort of native world to spend cryptocurrencies, that kind of makes sense. Like it's a native currency. And you've got NFTs that have been used for like avatars, items, digital land ownership. You can like ticket into something, so it's kind of like geofence in the real world, like you can actually get into places. It's like, and yeah, NFT art worth a lot. It's sort of, it's like, well, there's this physical space to put up on the wall, right? So that sort of understanding the virtual built environment is what really got me interested. I had a thing here was like, Wizard of Oz is such a great reference because it is that great and powerful, right? Again, it's all kind of facade intellectualism, I suppose. It's particularly good if you listen to Dark Side of the Moon while watching it.
Backwards though? Does it have to be backwards?
Yeah, well, that's if you want to go to hell.
Okay.
Sorry. But yeah, it was, I kind of did it. It was like trying out built environments before we built them. It's one of those sort of things. And I was give over what we'll do with Arrow, because I'm sure that it'll come up.
Okay, right. Hold that forward. Thanks for that, Nick. Troy, you've got a meaty question here, and I know you've got a large sheet of papers there, but hopefully it's not all in this one question. What considerations do we need to make now around the ethics and safe use of the metaverse? What's your opinion on that?
It's a meaty one, and even if you work for Amazon, to speak at an event like this, many of your words must be curated and not messaged. So forget the papers, and I won't try to refer to them, but I do get given a set of things I'd like to say, can say, I'm not allowed to say. And for me, I'm pushing it internally at the moment on ethics. You know, it's really easy for us to say, oh, it's up to the people who use what we do, or it's up to how they use our solutions. But recently, Amazon came out with a whole heap of new leadership principles, 2 of them. And one of them sort of with great scale comes great responsibility. And so I sort of picked it up as a license to run around and have a look at how these technologies are going to work and what that means. And we made a lot of mistakes in Web 2. We made a lot of understandings that we just didn't know where the technology was. I mean, it's fair to say that 10 years ago we didn't know what the internet would bring us, and we only have to see a 5G ad to know what we didn't have in 4G and 3G. 6G's coming, 7G's being worked on. How do we start preparing for those? So I'm pretty fortunate. I get to spend a lot of time talking to governments around Asia Pacific on what they're worried about and how this sort of technology is going to affect them. I've worked with a lot of emerging technology, and this one's really starting to scare them because they don't understand the fundamentals and they haven't got their base card right, except for a few examples, especially calling out Victor Dominello, New South Wales. They don't have got digital identity right. They haven't got the foundation bits right. So when you start thinking about who's who in the metaverse, I actually like it more than who's who in the web, because I sort of push it back to when the web was anonymous. You could be Mickey Mouse and send emails. Once it gets to the metaverse stuff, it's going to have so much for you. Even today, I started thinking about the benefits of single sign-on, but in the metaverse, I'm just walking along and I'm single signing on to the whole of the community and everything around me, and it's feeding me in and out. I'm not putting the password in. But as for the ethics, I think ethics isn't going to change. To me, ethics are standards about right or wrong and what humans ought to do. Ethics aren't law, ethics aren't religion. Ethics are something that are guided by a set of principles that we continue to work on. And those standards have reasonable obligations. We can't do this, we can't do that. People have stolen in the metaverse already. People have committed crimes in the metaverse. There's been physical crimes committed from avatar to avatar. How do we start thinking about that and communicating that to our children? I think also about rights, and we have a right to freedom, we have a right to privacy, we have a right to these things. How are people starting to manage that? So when the governments that are really forward thinking, and I need you to think that your governments are forward thinking, that this isn't something that just is on their plate. They're trying to work out what this means for 2032 just as much as we are, because they're the ones that have got to regulate it and protect it and make people safe in it. And the other thing is virtues. Does loyalty and compassion really matter in the metaverse? It's going to be really hard to go through these examples and work them out. So it's not a law. The main thing about the ethics in the metaverse is no different to the rest of the world. We've had them for thousands of years. We're just going to measure them differently, and there's just a bigger chance to really screw it up and get it wrong and cause harm in the metaverse. Most of the ethical concerns are about identity, expression, and I think it was touched on earlier, it's that inequality for those that aren't in play. So it's really important to make sure that everybody's brought along on the journey, and whatever we can do as any organisation, any government, anyone involved, an investor, a startup or something else, you've got to bring everyone along. The metaverse isn't going to be like we were as Australians in 1900 or 1950 or 2000. We're getting better as people. We are about diversity. If we don't manage that in the metaverse as well, then we've really got it wrong. But I know Australian police forces are really struggling at the moment and setting up units to understand how they police crime in the metaverse. It doesn't matter. I don't know if it matters legally. It'll be fought out over the years. What matters is Australians and local citizens on these platforms. We need to protect people, and we need to make sure that the normal things we'd expect in our own community is respected online just as it is in the streets. The other thing I want to say about ethics, and there are pages, is there's 3 M's that are sort of populating at the moment for the metaverse. These 3 things are going to change because studies are starting to show that avatars are scoring higher in trust values happiness than they are in real life. And these aren't the avatars that we're talking about where I look like a cartoon character, but deep fake AI avatars are starting to score really highly in science studies, and this one I'm talking about Lancaster and Berkeley universities, where they found that online avatars of people in the metaverse were more trustworthy than people that were fake, than people that were real, which means even advertising will start using avatars to start talking to you because they know what your preferences and what you like and how that'll work. But so three things that really are going to happen at the three ends of the metaverse. Again, stolen from a fantastic academic who's probably a name, but monitoring's not going away. Somebody's going to start monitoring your movements, how you're doing things, how long it takes. That monitoring is going to increase. The next one is manipulating your experiences. If you think advertising has been really interesting, the flat dynamic of where we are now, think about what it is when I can put in the real world somebody who you're a client to be interested to listen to and make that fake, or we can just put up, in placement advertising and make everything do that. Once we start going from world to world to world, that gets deeper, thicker, richer, and it's a guideline, which leads to the last one, which is monetization. There is a lot of companies involved, and they're not charities. So think about how you do stuff, and think about how that plays. But for me, they're really good points to start anchoring, what you need to do to think about that.
Cool. Thanks, Troy. So now I've got some questions just generally to the panel. So I'll just ask them, and then we'll go for some audience questions as well. So I've got about 3 questions that I wanted to ask. Just calling back to that last point, what can we do to make the metaverse more safe and inclusive? So there was some discussion before around, making it equitable and giving people a chance. What do you guys think about how we can make it an equitable space?
Mine was probably more about the direct benefit of that. But I definitely agree with what you're saying in terms of the monitoring piece as well. Who does that? I don't necessarily have that answer right at the moment. I think a lot of it's going to come down to organisations and their internal ethics in terms of how they're going to approach the metaverse as well. But we can't go blind with all this stuff. There are going to be issues. I guess we're just looking at this particular point in time. What are the benefits? What are the benefits that we can be offering? Our organisation, but also our clients, but also I guess the fraternities in terms of which we're associated with, the architect fraternity, engineers, science, how we can kind of develop things moving forward. I think the only other thing, I can't really answer that question necessarily, but I will say that we're presented with these issues anyway with online trolling the internet anyway. And the way that the next generation comes through and they consume the content is completely different to how we consumed it and our parents previously as well. So it will need to evolve. There's just no doubt about it.
So looking at that then, did you want to jump? Go for it.
Yeah, my concern. So yeah, definitely benefits, but sorry, bullshit also. What are we really doing? That was the whole. It's for everyone, but should we go opt out if we don't want to? Should we not turn that off? And currently, we should not have to go in. A good example that we looked at with Arab side was Google's alphabets dropped to the waterfront, so I looked at labs. There was essentially so much pushback that they had to stop doing that. You can lose your reputation so fast in that sort of space. And it was kind of the whole put your hands up here, right? We kind of worked when we walk down the street and which camera's on me, it's my focus, and all those sort of things. If you're in Facebook's Meta, Horizon World, they create the world, they have the platform you into it, they track your head to it, they have actually do everything. So if we're concerned about that, real world environment, that really goes over to that. It's created environment that you're amongst it.
Tracy?
I feel like we have this conversation about every new technology. I feel like I had the same conversation 12 years ago about Facebook, where we were all like, Jesus Christ, we can't go on Facebook as a company, oh my God, what are the ethics and morals? We still have that, of course, in some areas. But I feel like, ultimately we will put up governance and we'll put up boundaries. There will still be dicks online, right? That's the reality. There's going to be people that will troll you. There's going to be people that are out to just cause chaos. I think a company has a responsibility where they can to control that, but it's an uncontrollable space to a certain extent. And I think from an ethics perspective, we can do so much, but we also don't want to over-govern as well. I think that's when you start to get into problems. And I would just say that, Meta is a perfect example where, they've moved away from having a Facebook account tied to your Oculus account. And a lot of people, which is a good thing. I agree, I thought, great, that's an amazing thing. And then a friend of mine said, well, as long as it doesn't mean you can go in there without an account, because every time I go into an online space as a female, I get harassed. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had not thought about that. So from an ethics perspective, having a username tied to a Facebook account, if it's a real account, meant that they could be held accountable. Whereas when you remove that, suddenly some of those protections actually that come with that are also removed. So I think there's two sides to it, but I genuinely think this is just another evolution of technology where we'll all panic, have a little bit of a moral panic, and then we'll figure it out, and then there'll be something else. That might be simplistic.
Yeah, the response did?
Well, they want to control it all. It kind of all came about that internal memo 2013, something that said that we would sell on hardware, the T-Roll into Apple and Android sort of stuff. We want to own the hardware and actually do everything to the internet. And yeah, we were concerned, and I think, they essentially traded on social capital where many of the technology companies kind of built up this sort of goodwill. I think those sort of companies traded on that, and they were, I think at least we're at a good sort of concern. So I definitely, it's moving past we were concerned and now we all have Facebook. It's a little concerned about the control, and it's kind of like, is it really capitalism if it is controlled by all one? It's kind of the Robert Barron sort of the railways and sort of stuff. It's like, it's actually, we say it's like this is capitalism, but is it actually capitalism? Or should capitalism really be like a fair market? And if we have, Amazon and all those sort of things controlling it, it's kind of like, we think it's the sort of logical progression of capitalism, but it kind of isn't. It's more about centralized control.
Fair enough.
Not to bag Amazon.
No, all comments are fair. I didn't maybe never thought about it earlier, but I would for the video that, this is me, this is Amazon. Everything I'm saying here tonight is representing myself and the work I do with emerging technology around APAC. They know I'm here and all the rest of it, but look, for me, I think you've nailed most of it, but for the last 5 years plus, maybe more, I've worked with intelligence, defence, national security type customers that have gone through most of the processes that we are as civilians now. And they understood what a common operating picture looks like and a way to move forward and get a further advancement on technology. And while the Metaverse evolves, ethical issues and guidelines and frameworks need to be developed. Last week I went to an event with Dr. Katarina Wallace. Look her up on LinkedIn. She's an amazing person for those that don't know her. As a doctor, an ex-police person, a mother of 5, an author of a book on ethical AI, and way much more in the world. She sort of really explained to me about how we're getting these things wrong and what we need to do to really protect people and make it safe. It really is the same as, unfortunately, the same as the world. To quote Tracy, there's always a couple of, those people that are around. She comes from a company, I can't say that word, but but it's like the world. There's a bell curve. There's some good people, most in the middle, and at the end there's some people that make it wrong for everyone else. And so, she's a big driver. She set up a thing called the Responsible Metaverse Alliance. Check it out, Google it, do whatever. But it's all about this side about how do we make it safe and inclusive, because as a mother of 5, an ex-policewoman, she's right at that touch point. I've also been fortunate enough to do work with international agencies in regard to transnational crime, child slavery and things like that. When I see the capabilities of how bad this could be, it's no different to me talking about my 7-year-old daughter with autism and how she attacks the internet, and my 18-year-old daughter who attacks it a totally different way, and they come home to their parents and you sit there and go, oh my God, that's today. This is 2022. Start thinking about what's next and get involved, because I feel like as a community and people that are being interested tonight, it's such an early ground point that you can do anything and anywhere in there and you can start playing. There's a whole way to be involved in that ecosystem. Look at where you want to be. I don't know, pick the Gartner hype cycle for want of better words, or some sort of reference that I might have to pay $50. And dive into it. There's so much available at the moment. I know we're worried about the ethics, but it does feel like it's Groundhog Day. When I got the first telephone on my desk, the boss said you'll call your wife all day or you'll call your girlfriend all day and you won't work. It wasn't true. When they gave you Facebook at work, they said you'd spend all day on Facebook. Not true. So when they do these sorts of things, it's that historical risk factor. But the metaverse is going to change that, and the reason is the amount of data it's going to have on you will actually prove things right or wrong. There'll be no grey. And to those that don't like or disagree with the way some countries are starting to collect data on their citizens, it'll be a big thing for us to,
Are we trying to?
Turn your own mic off. You gave yourself the old look.
That was because of what I said.
So the ethics and the inclusivity and those issues aside, what are some of the other challenges to the mass entry or the mass adoption to the metaverse? What are some of the other things that are going to stop the metaverse being all it could be?
You look ridiculous in a headset.
Yep.
Yeah. Somebody really needs to make some cool headset. Well, they'll come, right? Like it'll evolve, but there's just, you always look stupid. People are not comfortable looking stupid, and plus, who wants to sit in a headset all day? It's just, so if you start thinking about it as a shared workspace, it's just not going to replace easily face-to-face or even a Zoom or Teams or whatever environment, because it's just too cumbersome. But the next 10 years that will go pretty quickly, I think, and hopefully we'll get some kind of sexy, cool VR headsets. But until that happens, you've got to embrace it. Like, I'm a nerd, I just put them on and I don't care. But other people feel a bit awkward about that. So I think that is a barrier to entry, and I think cost for a lot of people, right? Like even though Meta have gone in really cheap on the hardware so that they suck you in and make money back on the software, a lot of people are not going to go out and put that as a high priority item, I don't think, at this stage.
Anyone else got any thoughts or?
I'll just jump on the back of that one, because we found the same sort of things. I mean, we've been talking about AR and VR for probably about 10 years in static design, and it was exactly that. Like Google Glass, I can't remember when that came out, and that actually was reasonably kind of cool looking, and the ability to sort of pull down live data about what you're actually doing and experience and try and raise, the heightened experience with, different sort of levels of offering within the actual stadium, that you get more statistical data or you'll be able to get a greater experience. It unfortunately just hasn't resonated, and I don't know whether it's the cool factor so much or the fact that we kind of didn't really kind of grow up with that, and it's going to be a generational change as well.
Yeah, I also think we are uncomfortable with digital. That mix between the physical world and digital world is a bit uncomfortable at the moment. But I think we'll get past that. For me, the barriers to adoption are people, process, policy. Like, it's not technology. Like, how to get past this stuff is get people to use it. They need to experience and they need to then go, holy, actually not even holy, sorry, not what offense I'm on. Amazing, that might help somebody. To me, I think coincidentally the biggest promises that the metaverse will make are also the biggest barriers. So for me, interoperable identity. How does one identity work across my license Who identity? Who owns it? The platform, the government, the person that interacts with it. I want to move across spaces. I want to look like me, whatever that looks like. I'll be thinner.
Or a cat.
No. No. Good for slippers. I have one. I like it, but you know. And I want to also have real-time interaction with billions of touch points. Like the things that I'm going to do. Like when I started thinking about it this afternoon, only about being single sign-on, I was like, yeah, I can log into this account. I don't have to put a password in. And I feel like, man, in 20 years' time, I'll walk down the street and everything will know everything about me, and I'll log into whatever I need to, and on my screen will come all the extra information, and I'll be going, oh wow. And it'll be like Dorothy, and those shoes will be so red, and our kids will go, Dad, you're an idiot. And so, yeah, look, I don't know, I think that this single sign-on thing is really real, but to be honest, the big barrier, us, people, we hate change, process, policy, governments, slow to change. Really lucky here in Queensland, though, that both, all three, Advance Queensland, the Department of Innovation, Sport and Tourism, and the Office of the Chief Entrepreneur are really pushing this agenda at the moment and are trying to understand how they can play in this space to make sure that companies like this are active in the environment and making things better for citizens. So don't be scared, I think, to reach out after this event to the organisers to follow up if you need to.
Thanks, Troy. Yeah, please do. As I stand up to prepare ourselves for audience questions, so just get yourselves ready while we go to the last response.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wrote a note. It's like there's a high probability that inequality is going to increase. So there's very much this like, who's involved shaping it, where we're going. And I didn't intend on bringing this up, but one of the things I do is provide basic electricity to people that don't have it. So there's kind of about 800 million people in the world. Most of them have a phone, but they can't actually charge it. A lot of tech companies are like, let's connect the whole world to the internet. It's like, well, if you don't have to charge a phone, you can't kind of go into it. And so even just from that lens, I've kind of really seen that like basic electricity being able to, we've got extended parental hours a day with live. If you don't charge your phone, you can access all of those information and communicate. So it's just like, if that's one end of the spectrum that's kind of overlooked. There's an electricity kind of burn discussion, but we've kind of go over that. But yeah, it's just, it could go really bad. And so I do a really fair with Arab looking at the futures kind. To really go like, what are all the possible futures?